During the last years of my father's reign, England had remained nominally Catholic. The clergy were expected to remain celibate. Mass was celebrated in Latin, and heretics were burned. But also many churches had English Bibles. Monasteries were suppressed and land confiscated. Reformers were chosen to educate my younger siblings. Even my stepmother, Catherine Parr, studied the new Bibles in secret. It just remained for my father to die, and the Protestant faction on his council would pave the way for the removal of Catholicism once and for all. When this happened, the Earl of Hertford, Edward Seymour, made himself Lord Protector, taking possession of the new king, my brother Edward. Along with Archbishop Cranmer, he persuaded the rest of the council that my father had meant to establish a Protestant government, and so began the slide of England into heresy. I withdrew from court. I could not bear to see my beloved religion made illegal. I was now heir to the throne again until my brother married and produced children of his own, but I lived quietly with my own household, continuing to celebrate the Catholic Mass in my own chapels with my servants. Throughout my brother's reign, he repeatedly demanded that I follow the laws regarding religion, even once reducing us both to tears during a Christmas visit, when he publicly reprimanded me for ignoring his laws. I appealed to my cousin, the Holy Roman Emperor, to bring diplomatic pressure on Edward's council to allow me to practice my religion. But Edward was as stubborn as our father, and he refused. I was becoming a figurehead, though, for the Catholic faith. Nobility and gentry alike flocked to my household for me to give employment to their daughters, as they knew I adhered to the true religion. There was a proposal that I marry a Protestant prince, Prince of Brandenburg, and I feared that the council would force me. So I wrote to the emperor saying I would do nothing without his consent. But I had to leave England. I could not stay here. Plans were put in place for me to escape the country. The imperial ambassador tried to help me, suggesting that when he was recalled to Brussels, I could travel out to his ship and escape. Weeks later, when all was in place, the boats were ready to go, I was not. I had not packed. Doubts beset me. I was not sure I was doing the right thing. As heir to the throne and the only royal supporter of Catholicism, I could not leave. God was testing me. In my indecision, things came to a head, and the council had heard of the imperial fleet waiting. It had been immobilized by storms, but eventually sailed away back to the Netherlands without me. And the council, realizing that an escape had been planned, took precautions that I should never again leave England. They put it abroad that the emperor had planned to kidnap me and claim England, causing shock and outrage. In 1551, the Lord Protector Somerset was toppled by a coup led by the Duke of Northumberland, and he was accused of treason and conspiracy. He was executed, and a more radical policy of religious reform was implemented by Northumberland. He had an agenda, and by using flattery and making Edward believe he was ruling his own country, he was able to take complete control. But by 1553, Edward was sick. Northumberland had a plan to change the succession, excluding Elizabeth and myself, and bestowing the crown on our cousin, Jane Grey, who just so happened to be married to his own son, Guildford. This was presented to Edward as a way of safeguarding his new religion, and Edward agreed. So he changed his will in favour of Jane's heirs male, but changed this in favour of Jane once he realised how sick he was, and how unlikely it was that Jane would have a son before he died. He died on the 6th of July. This news was suppressed, and instead a summons to Greenwich was sent to Elizabeth and I to come to court to comfort our brother. Elizabeth took to her bed in illness, and in ignorance of the truth I set out. On the road, a well-wisher intercepted me to warn me of the trap ahead, so I diverted to Kenninghall in Norfolk. Lord Robert Dudley, Northumberland's son, was sent to bring me to London. He could not catch me. I received word of Edward's death and wrote to the Privy Council with my orders for my proclamation as Queen. But to my horror, on the 10th of July, Jane Grey was proclaimed Queen in London. I made my plans to take my rightful throne as the true heir of England, and on the 12th I assembled a military force at Framlingham Castle. Northumberland himself was forced to lead an army against me. But I was my mother's daughter, a true warrior queen, and the legal heir to Henry VIII and Edward. So I raised my troops and the country rose with me. By the 18th, all support from Northumberland had melted away. I was proclaimed Queen in the City of London on July the 19th. The crowd going wild with delight. I had won. I was the first Queen Regnant of England. Jane and her husband were imprisoned in the Tower, and I rode triumphantly into London on August the 3rd with my sister Elizabeth beside me and a procession of 800 noblemen. I was ecstatic. My birthright was secured, and I was the Queen, able to choose my own fate and begin a life that could involve a marriage of my choosing and even children.